Welcome to Solutions OP Clinical Trials Podcast. My name is Olga and I'm the Managing Director of Solutions OP. We are a small team of experienced professionals working on clinical trials in the United Kingdom. I'll use our podcast to discuss hot topics in clinical trials and provide analysis of the latest trends and challenges in pharma and medical device industries, not just in the UK but globally. Thank you for listening. Welcome to today's episode of the podcast. The topic of this episode is clinical research in Japan, and with my guest we will be covering topics which are like what is required to set up a clinical trial in Japan, but also what initiatives the Japanese government has to support small companies and startups who are interested in conducting clinical research in Japan. So my special guest is Tetsu Yung today, who has a very broad experience and expertise. He has a PhD in cellular and molecular biology, but he also has an MBA in finance and international business. He has worked in the past in big pharma companies like Eisai and also some CROs like Fortea, LabCorp and Covance. And I'm really impressed that he knows 5 languages. I'm super impressed by this, I have to say. So thank you for Tetsu for joining me today. And I'll ask him the first question, which is to tell me a bit more about yourself and your experience in clinical research in Japan.
Well, Olga, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a tremendous honor to talk about not just clinical research, but I guess the life science industry and how it's going in general in Japan. I would really love to talk about many aspects because Japan is really giving a strong push to improve its output in the life sciences, and especially as you mentioned just very briefly, there's a lot of push for the startups, small companies from the government level. So I will touch upon some of these points today. But starting with who I am, why I do this with Japan, or why I speak the languages that you mentioned. So I am half Taiwanese, half Japanese. So I grew up in Taiwan. So my childhood memory is all from Taiwan, from a Taiwanese father and a Japanese mother. So I spent the school year in Taiwan and then spent a few weeks to a few months of the summer vacation in Japan, and I did this until the end of my elementary school. Then I came over to where I am now, which is Quebec, Canada, to do my high school, then university, then graduate studies. So, but something that was supposed to be just for student on a student visa eventually became a whole immigration thing, and the whole family came over. I started here alone, actually, with my aunt as a student, but then we loved the experience so much that the whole family came over. We're all Canadians now. Okay, so I did that, and I guess throughout university I studied biology and then cellular molecular biology, PhD. Then after my PhD, I finally went to Japan as a postdoc. So I got a grant from the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science. So this is JSPS grant for postdocs, and that's how everything my career, I guess, in Japan started. As a postdoc first at the Tokyo Institute of Technology, and then I went over to the pharma side. So this is Eisai. You mentioned they're very famous for their Alzheimer's drugs, starting with Aricept, and now it's lecanemab. And then went over to the kind of the dark side, I guess, to clinical operations, running the Japan portion of global clinical studies. And this was, I guess, about half my career with Japan. This is 11, 12 years or so. So that in a nutshell, I guess, would be my whole outline of my career, starting with a postdoc, and then Eisai, and then clinical operations at Covance, which became LabCorp, now spun out as Fortea. And then 2 years ago, I started my own little company, a little consultancy called Tetsu Consulting. So Tetsunagi. It's just an exotic word that includes my first name. Tetsunagi means handshake or hand-holding. So it kind of symbolizes the collaborative spirit, and it symbolizes how I lead my clients in the right direction by holding their hands. My classmate or my schoolmate, I guess, during my postdoc years at Tokyo Institute of Technology, he came up with this name, and it was bingo right away at the beginning.
That's a really good name. Yeah, I agree. So you really have like international experience working particularly with Japanese companies and helping them bridging people between different Western countries and Japan, and that's quite fascinating. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the strength. I tried to build it from like a very, very minute area up to up wider. Like I had a mentor at McGill University where I went to do my bachelor's and my MBA. That professor told me, if you don't know what you're gonna do in life, go as small as possible. So he meant like go into microbiology or go into nanotech or go as minute as possible and then go wider later in life. So I did do a big postdoc for about 5 years at the Tokyo Institute of Technology, just doing very basic research, on these cellular processes and DNA repair, transcription, and oncology stuff that I was really focusing on in those days. And I think that's helped give me a very strong scientific foundation. And then I went over to Eisai, where I was kind of combining my MBA knowledge and my scientific knowledge, helping the CSO at the time, Dr. Yoshimatsu. He took me under his wing, and in a short few years really gave me a taste of, training in every aspect of the whole drug development value chain, starting from very, very early stuff at the labs, those high throughput screenings and medicinal chemistry, and eventually going into some regulatory and then a lot of clinical development, with a bite of, business development and whatnot along the way. So that was a great, great, great experience at Eisai. I still love that company.
That's perfect.
And I did leave. I did leave, not because I hated Eisai, not because I hated the people. I'd stay there if I had the choice. But through very, very family reasons. Now, I got married to a girl who was from Nagasaki, and for those who don't know, Nagasaki is like a 2-hour flight from Tokyo. Mm. So Eisai, back in the day, did not allow work from home and whatnot. Whereas Covance, the company I eventually went to, they allow work from home, even in Japan. It was very avant-garde in those days. So I had to make a choice, between family life and professional life, and I chose family without any hesitation. So, well, I'd be lying if I say without hesitation. It was tough. It was tough to leave Eisai, but I'll do it in a heartbeat again.
Yeah.
So I got married and then went to Nagasaki and worked from there for this company in Tokyo. It's an American company, but the affiliate.
Yeah. So from your experience in Japan, so what is the very top level, requirements to get a clinical trial approved in Japan? How long does it take, from your experience working in Japan?
So, overall, I would say the process is similar to the U.S., with the parallels, like a pre-IND meeting and an IND submission and things like that, on a conceptual level is the same. It's really in the operations that's quite different. Like even the pre-IND meeting, you only have one pre-IND in principle in the U.S., but for Japan, you have a similar thing that is a pre-meeting, pre-IND. They don't call it IND, they call it CTN, for clinical trial notification. So you do have like those pre-meetings, but it's actually one formal meeting and many smaller informal discussions. I don't know what the direct translation is, but it's basically a lot of informal short meetings where you talk about one specific topic. If it's CMC, it's CMC. If it's talks, it's talks. But you have one little things that you kind of sort of adjust for the main event. So in Japan, a lot of things happen that way. You have like the main
like an ongoing discussion you have. Yeah.
Correct. And you get to like adjust all the way to that main event, which becomes the de facto, I would say, ceremony kind of thing, because you have so many adjustments up to that point. But that's how it works for the regulatory meetings in Japan. It's and then the clinical trial notification also carries a 30-day wait, just like the IND.
Okay.
Except that you need to submit a clinical trial notification for every study that you do, whereas in the U.S., the IND, you do it once per drug or per program, right? So that, in that sense, you need to submit a clinical trial notification for every study. Although the second one is like 15 days instead of.
Just out of curiosity, what level of translation you need for documents? I think that's maybe the most intimidating for companies when they think, oh gosh, do I need to translate like everything, or is it?
Well,
what's your experience?
You need to translate for all the essential documents.
Yeah.
The protocol, the ICF, obviously.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But if it's patient facing, but yeah, all the key ingredients need to be translated into Japanese. But usually what we do, I was working at Covance, or now for TRIA. Usually what we do is we say the official version is the English version, but for operational purposes, the PI can use the Japanese translation.
Yeah.
So that's how we sort of frame it, so that in case there's like a difference in interpretation between the two languages, but yeah, it has to be translated into Japanese for use.
So it's very straightforward, and from what you're saying, it looks more aligned with the way US is dealing with submissions.
Yeah.
Because in Europe it's a bit more complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with Europe, but for the few that I had, it's always like
it's a bit more complicated. Yeah.
It's very nitty gritty kind of thing, but yeah. But on a overall, if we come back to the overall timeline, from clinical trial notification to first patient in is usually about 3 months. Like when you start your feasibility, you go to a site, you talk to the investigator, you give them like a questionnaire. They'll sort of look at what's possible, what's not possible, and then if it's good, you go to what is called it's a PSV, so pre-study visits or a few companies have different names for that, but essentially you're sort of qualifying the study site.
Yeah.
Right? And so from that point on, we're talking 3 to 6 months. Very quick is 3 months, but usually 5 or 6 months before you get your first patient in. Depending on the indication, clinical trial material, operations, and whatnot. So 3 to 6 months, but it's quite predictable from that sense. All the documentations, they're standard documents that are used in Japan for lots of these procedures.
Oh, okay.
What is complicated is it's complicated from a foreign lens, but it's very normal in Japan. Is that every site has their own contract template, and every site has their budget table. It's like a point sheet. So in Japan, due to this rigidness of the system, you basically don't negotiate a lot. Okay, there's not a lot of room for negotiation per se. The only thing is like maybe the duration of the study, depending on how you see things. But usually there's not a lot of negotiation room. Whatever the site says, you kind of just have to accept for the most part. But that makes the contracting process quite fast. Whereas in the States, I hear horror stories where you just can't get the PI to sign, and then it's like 3, 4, 5 months down the road just on that contract signature, right? I hear that quite a lot, and that doesn't happen in Japan. It's essentially 3 to 6 months, 3 on a very, very fast end, and 6 months
for the slow
5-6
ones.
months is on the normal end, I would say.
Yeah.
You can kind of very well predict it.
It's quite similar in Europe, by the way. It also for us takes up to 5-6 months to get the site. So basically,
how about the contracting? Is that?
Well, the contracting is different. So in the UK, we have like a contract template, which is for all hospitals. They use the same template, and the budget is also standardized in a way, so you don't have much negotiation, similar to Japan. So that one in the UK is streamlined. In Europe is slightly different because they tend to have like different budgets for the different countries and then negotiate based on that. But in the UK it's quite straightforward, similar to what you're saying about Japan. There's not much negotiation. If you just need to accept whatever is the country template and go on with it. So
some of these things can get very scary for global sponsors. For example, I had a study for a cardiovascular indication. And as you may know, these are huge studies, like thousands of patients, even tens of thousands of patients, depending on the specific indication. I had to recruit 400 patients in Japan for 36 sites. And one of the sites is still very, very traditional Japanese, where back in the day, they make you pay all the costs up front at signature and not like on a patient per patient basis. I doubt that they can do that like today. There's always like a little upfront fee, like for the overheads and whatnot, maybe 20-30% of the entire budget. But that specific site had a 100% upfront payment, and that really scared the sponsors back in the day. And I had like a call from the COO of the company saying, "Are you sure we're going to sign this contract for $1.225 million US?" Yeah, that's how it works. But Japan works on an honor basis, right? And if they said they're going to do it, they're going to do it. Yeah. And in fact, the PI recruited very quickly and fulfilled his contract very quickly, and then went on to do an extension. So anyways.
That's fascinating. You see, probably that's why people are scared, because if they do that in Europe and someone promised them they'll recruit, it doesn't mean they'll do it, it's just a promise, that's all.
Indeed.
You can see the cultural differences here.
Yes. By and large, Japanese deliver on time, on quality, and it's you just gotta trust the system. But it's hard. I understand it. It's hard when you come from a system that's more based on scrutiny and need proof first. And this is reflected in interpersonal relationships also.
Yeah.
So I've had people who I've worked with who I've really decided I cannot work with this person for the Japanese market because he's going to be suspicious of every interaction that comes our way. And that's just not going to fly in Japan. You trust first, and then if things go wrong, you find a way to amend. But 99.9% of the times, people have come with good faith, and so
that's fascinating. I find that really impressive. Yeah, that's very interesting.
One of the only countries in the world where you could lose your wallet and find it, 99 times out of 100, I would say. I know because my wife has lost it I don't know how many times. I always find it near the closest Koban, which is like the police station near you. It is. It is like that. It's hard to believe, but it is like that.
That's really very interesting, and the cultural differences are very interesting. So from your point of view, what do you think companies need to know when they prepare to set up clinical trials in Japan? What are your recommendations, how they should approach the matter?
Yeah, well, so like I've been trying to say, it is a very good, a tremendously efficient and high-value market. I guess I don't really need to expand too much on that. In a top-notch premier science country with all the Nobel Prizes in the world, right? complex in its operation, and it's complex in the psychology. As I've been telling you, if you start with like, well, you need to prove your value to me, then it already puts a crack in the interpersonal relationship from the get-go. It's hard. It's even though it's the first time you're meeting somebody with the Japanese, you need to come with good faith and sort of trust that the person who will deliver on whatever he or she said. If he's going to deliver something by Monday, chances are very good that he will deliver on Monday. That's the sort of thing that, in Japan, you got to know how to work the system and sort of just be able to rely on people and trust people, because you're not going to do it alone. There's just so many intricacies that you have to know in Japan to get things working. And from that perspective, when somebody doesn't respond to an email, well, what does he or she mean? Did you write something wrong? Or sometimes it's because they don't like to say no. So, like I just mentioned, if they promise something, then they feel very, very obligated to produce it. But if they don't say it and sort of keep it gray until the next trigger, maybe meeting at the next conference or whatever, they can sort of let it go by. These are, I guess, different cultural cues and nuances that one needs to know. It's very complex. You need to learn quite a bit. And I usually say, it's like if you want to climb the mountain of Japan, like you climb Mount Everest, you can give it a try and take the time you need to do it, or you can hire a Sherpa, somebody who knows how the system works. And there's a lot of people, not trying to toot my own horn, but there's a lot of companies now, who are specializing in this type of work where they provide Japan access services, I guess. Many consultants and many big companies are doing this. I mean, obviously also because Japan needs the foreign business, so it is a win-win in that sense. And I mentioned at the top of the interview that, Japan is doing a huge push from the resources perspective, from the money perspective, into with tax money into the system. They're really trying to do many types of initiatives for that. So
that's very interesting what you're saying, because in the Western countries we tend to overpromise everything, and everyone is pushing to get everything done by yesterday. So it's very interesting, really, to see the cultural difference that people will not promise something they know they won't deliver. And
but if you get the promise, if you get them to give that promise, then you can rely on it fairly well. So that's, I guess, the soft side of things. And then on the hard side, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, a regulatory meeting has a lot of pre-meetings, so there's a lead time. So I would definitely recommend global companies, when they look at Japan, to not just say, okay, I got the U.S. done, now let's think about the rest of the world, including Japan. That's kind of, quite late. The fastest way to get Japan is to include Japan into your pivotal study. And to include Japan into your pivotal study, you need to talk to the PMDA well ahead of your FPI and your pivotal study. They have made changes, but you now, in principle, don't need a PK. Before, you used to have to run what is called a run-in study, get Japanese patients PK before actually enrolling them with the study drug. Into the main part of the study. Now they've taken that off. They're just trying to make it easier for foreign companies to come in. But you still need to think of the strategy first in order to include Japan into your phase 3. That's the fastest way. It'll cost you a little bit more on your pivotal study, but you'll get to submit at the same time as you submit to the FDA and the EMA. And it's the fastest way than to actually do another bridging study afterwards. I see, and I agree with you. Probably that's the best way to do it. So my next question is a bit more about small companies and startups. So are there any initiatives from the Japanese government to
encourage companies to run clinical trials in Japan? Because I think there are quite a lot of things going on internationally.
Yes.
People are trying to attract more startups and smaller companies to invest. So is there anything specific about the Japanese government that you know and you can share?
There's been a lot of initiatives, and it's ongoing. And I hear a lot of chatter around government initiatives to make Japan more global, and enable companies to come in more easily with reducing the barriers. One is what I just mentioned earlier, about the PK thing for global companies to come in, and also there are like the orphan drug designation parallel to the U.S. one. There's a Sakigake designation, which is like a fast track or breakthrough therapy kind of thing. All these things, have their parallels to the U.S. But one thing that does not have a parallel in the U.S. is a program administered by a funding agency called AMED. So this is a government agency that is basically the equivalent of the NIH of the U.S. So AMED has this program called the Strengthening Program for Pharmaceutical Startup Ecosystem. Pharmaceutical Startup Ecosystem. It's a program to strengthen it, okay? So it's a very long name. It's a mouthful, but it's very descriptive. It's I think $2.7 billion US dollar equivalent, approximately, fund that started in 2022, going all the way to 2032, so a 10-year program. And the model is very cool. It's that AMED has a series of VCs that are registered with them, so AMED registered VCs. And if you come in as a startup, and you get money from any one of these registered VCs, let's say $10 million, okay? Then AMED will put in another $20 million on top of that. So 2 to 1, not even matching, it's 2 times the amount that the VC puts in. And this is non-dilutive. They don't need any equity. They don't sit on a board. They don't want any control.
That's amazing.
Is it not? There you go. It is an amazing program, and as amazing as it sounds, AMED is still struggling to find enough assets to invest in. And so they really opened it up to the global startups to come into Japan. The minimum requirement, technically speaking, is you need to have a local entity in Japan. Just like, you need a local entity when you go for those tax incentives in Australia, right?
Yeah.
So that part is sort of the easy part. But it is tax money, so AMED needs to justify to the Japanese people how they're using these funds. So this is it's a huge chunk of money, but they need to say, well, we're investing in an American company's affiliate, but they're dealing with a very strong, unmet medical need in Japan. They're using Japanese vendors. They're collaborating with a Japanese company, a Japanese university, or the technology comes from a Japanese university. They hire a CEO, and they're grooming the CEO to become a global asset. Yeah, you need that kind of Japan story, narrative around your asset in order to justify the use of these funds. So that's sort of the part that is, it's hard to satisfy immediately for many companies, but you can build that narrative, as you move forward from the discovery phase into your pre-IND and IND phase. The target for this grant is really for, like you said, for startups. It's for companies that are, technically 2 years before candidate selection, so very early. Although I've never seen any that early. I think the sweet spot is around IND enabling studies, the long-term talks, and things like that. I think that's kind of the sweet spot to get this grant and maximize its value up to. I think you can do it until up to and including phase 2 POC. So they don't fund phase 3. Okay, it's up to and including phase 2 POC.
So early development basically. So that's
correct.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that's great initiative.
It's an amazing program. Yeah, and they finally have some companies that from global companies setting up shop in Japan and got that grant recently. So yeah, and I'm very close with the guys running the program at AMED, and every time we go to Bio, we go to JP Morgan, we would do these Japan Access sessions, and it's always very popular. People don't know about this, although they are getting to know it more and more. I'm hearing people talk about it all the time. And this is an amazing program, not just for the startup. I mean, obviously, you go out and hustle for $10 million, and suddenly you have $30 million in your bank. That is, easy to understand, but it's also amazing for the VCs. Imagine you put in $10 million into your asset, and somebody just comes along and gives you another 20 million to make it happen, right? You've suddenly de-risked your asset by, threefold. And the person doesn't even want to, control, because he could easily take more control than you, given that they put in 200% of what you put in. But no, your equity is not diluted. Your power, your control is not diluted. So this is an amazing program for the VCs, for the investors.
Definitely.
Well. So
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of global VCs are getting registered with AMED, including the Blackstones and the EQTs and the Curies. These are the latest ones to add on. Or TPG, F Prime, and some of these bigger guys have been there forever, since the inception. But many people are taking notice, and I'm hearing about this, everywhere I go. It's a great program, don't you think?
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, that's really fascinating, and it's really great initiative. I think that's very clever thing to attract investment to Japan, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm coming to the very last question, where I'm going to ask you about why it's worth for pharma companies to consider the Japanese market as part of their drug development program, which I think you touch on many cases, but just as a final, what you would like to say.
I'll give you an easy one to remember that I use everywhere I go when I give presentations. And that really distills all the reasons to consider Japan as a market for you. And it's in one acronym, J Prime. Okay? So JPRIME, J-PRIME. J, stands for obviously Japan. Japan is still a huge market. So that's a no-brainer. Now, P of the prime is premier science and innovation. I need to convince you with a number of Nobel Prizes that we've had on a per capita basis. It's just by far a very strong scientific country, right? And then R is for reliability and integrity. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier about the honesty of the people and the reliability, and that they will deliver whatever they say they will deliver on at the time that they said they will deliver at. So that's kind of a thing that's not written, out in CVs and whatnot, but it's something that's kind of a hidden cost elsewhere in the world. Whereas in Japan, this business friction is just barely there, right? Infrastructure. Infrastructure in Japan for drug development is very, very lean and very, very efficient. All the travel logistics, couriers, all these, delivery logistics are very, very efficient. It's time to the hour on many of these things, with temperature control and whatnot. It's just an amazing system that's fully functional. As long as you know how to drive this Formula One car, right? And then M is for market access and stability. It's a country that has very, very low crime rate. It is very stable, easy to access from many, many big hubs from the world. Direct flights from all the major hubs in the world. And finally, the E, and this is good for in terms of timing. It's E is for economic advantage of the weak yen, and also the funding that I mentioned earlier. So the yen is really weak right now. It used to be almost to parity to the US dollar before the pandemic. Like a $1 is almost like 100 and it was like 105 yen or so. Now it's 160 yen. Think about it. So every dollar you spend in Japan right now goes 50, 60 miles further. So that, from an investment perspective, is huge, right? And then the funding, like I just mentioned, it's a no-brainer. The government is handing out money to you to come to Japan to make things work. And the program that I mentioned earlier, once again, is called the Strengthening Program for Pharmaceutical Startup Ecosystem. So it's pharma, it's therapeutics, but they are, talking about medtech. There's lots of grants at AMED that are available for the small companies in Japan right now. And again, they're pushing to put Japan back on the map. I say back on the map, on the global map, because Japan used to be a world leader in pharma back in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
For every 3 new chemical entities that comes out, one came from the U.S., one came from Japan, and the rest of the world shared the remaining third. Those were the golden years, and today it's like 2 out of 3 comes out of the U.S., and then the rest of the world shares the remaining third. Japan was like 7% of them. It's just so Japan is really noticing this decline in productivity, and they want to really push Japan back onto the map because we know we can.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it's just been a slow decline over the past few decades, and it's coming back fast. I am seeing activities everywhere, and focus on Japan coming back.
That's really fantastic. Thank you so much for your time and for having this discussion. And in addition, I can say it's very important from purely regulatory point of view to have access to Asia is to get approval for your drug in Japan. Yes. So it's always considered like a gateway if you want to get your drug to the Asian market.
Thank you for mentioning that. It is still one of the top 3 regulatory agencies in the world, with the EMA, FDA, and PMDA. So you get one in Japan, then right away you can go to Korea and all the Asia Pacific countries relatively easily.
Yeah, you have a fast track, a better. It just looks better when you have from the Japanese authorities when you have approval. So Japan is a very promising place for your clinical trials. Definitely something to consider and to discuss with local experts if you want to go on a trip and set up your clinical trials in Japan. Thank you so much again, Tetsu, for joining me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you so much.